Joining me now to tackle whether or not the president is helping or hurting his re-election chances is Jenna Ellis, constitutional law attorney and a member of the Trump 2020 Advisory Board, and Spencer Critchley, Democratic strategist and former communications advisor for Barack Obama's presidential campaigns. Jenna, I want to start with you. Is there a danger that today's tweet storm could actually bolster Biden and backfire on the president?
I don't think so. I mean, Trump's clearly he's leading in the polls. I mean, you know that I don't put a lot of personal stock in any of the polls just on their own merit. But certainly the president, it's definitely a positive for the economy, the low unemployment rate. I mean, all of these things that actually go into an election. I mean, listen, we're 18 months from 2020. And so the tweets today versus tomorrow, all of those things just I think everyone is used to and understands that we're hearing directly from the president. And we're hearing what he thinks, and he's definitely going to be commenting on the 2020 election, and he's going to be commenting on all of the Democratic candidates who, right now no one really poses a threat to his reelection in 2020 because his base has definitely grown. So I don't think that his tweets are going to hurt him in the least, and definitely his base is looking at everything that he's done pro-America and pro-economy and all of the things that are voting issues. I don't think, and certainly no one I've personally talked to has said, I'm not voting for President Trump just because of his Twitter feed.
All right, let's get over to Spencer. I just want to get your thoughts on this. The president retweeting dozens of people to show that firefighters support him, not Joe Biden. What do you think about Jenna's comments there? Do you think the tweets help or hurt?
Well, I agree with a fair bit of what Jenna just said. I think that people know who Donald Trump is right now, and one day of crazy tweets is a lot like another day of crazy tweets, and it's a lot like 2 years of crazy tweets. I think that also with polls, we have to realize polls are volatile, and I think Jenna's right. It's way out in front of Election Day, and we're surprised week by poll results. Imagine how surprised we might be a few months down the road, and even by the actual election results as we were in 2016. I think, though, that what we're going to see as time goes by, and that's what it really matters is as time goes by, Trump's supporters are gradually waking up to the many, many lies he's told about health care, about tax cuts, which have gone to benefit the people at the top. And I think Joe Biden's surge in the polls, again, it's very early, but it may be an indication of somebody who makes the perfect antagonist for Donald Trump, somebody who represents really hope and light, I would say, versus fear and dark.
All right, you both have made very abundantly clear that you are not putting much stock in polls, especially this early on. So naturally, we want to talk about polls right now. New CNN poll reveals the president's approval rating on the heels of the Mueller report is actually now at its highest level in 2 years. It's now at 43%. Jenna, what does that number say to you about what Americans think about the probe?
Well, this CNN poll, if you actually go down, 1,007 people were interviewed and actually asked about this. And, polls, again, are really not a margin that we can look at and say, oh, just because today he's, according to CNN, it's a great poll, now that means that we can somehow put stock in this for 2020. And so, yay, now the president's approval rating is XYZ. And then tomorrow, you'll have me back on to be like, CNN says that he's down in the polls. What does that mean for 2020? I don't think that means anything. I think that if we look at over the course of presidential elections in history, we see that incumbent presidents with a very strong economy, a very low unemployment rate, and we have historic records on both of these fronts, and everything that President Trump has genuinely done in the interest of American people, that stands on its own merit regardless of who and what 1,000 people tomorrow CNN wants to interview. And I think that President Trump's base is very strong. We look at the rallies, all of the people who are coming out to support him, the evangelical community, the independents. I mean, everyone who is so pro-Trump, and Biden is only running, and every other Democrat is only running their campaign based on an anti-Trump narrative. I'd really like to know, what are they for? How are they going to sustain this great economy that President Trump has boosted? We're not hearing any of that from the Democratic left. And so I think that weighs a lot stronger going into the last 18 months we have in this election, much more than any poll.
Well, maybe we'll let Spencer answer that question right now. So what are the Democrats for other than running anti-Trump?
I disagree with that. I think most of the Democratic candidates have been careful not to talk too much about Trump, and they've been focusing on bread and butter issues like health care, like where tax cuts go, who's going to pay off this enormous debt that's being created. I think Biden stands out because he's come out so full-throated against Trump, which is something that I think most of the Democratic mainstream would have advised against. And I actually think that that's a lesson for other Democrats. And it's not so much whether you're talking about Trump or not. It's more about just talking about what you actually believe in and sticking to your guns. Speaking of polls, I think one failing Democrats do have is that they tend to get spooked by polls a little bit too much, whereas Republicans, if they see a poll they don't like, they say, how do we change this poll? And I think that that's one of the strengths of Biden. I'd say it's a strength of some of the other candidates, like Bernie Sanders, for example. Love him or not, he's very much on his own message. Or Pete Buttigieg, I think, is another good example of this kind of thing. As far as the economy goes, this comes up a lot. First of all, even if it were true that Trump were responsible for economic performance, I hope our democratic principles are not for sale. And President Trump is attacking our democracy day by day at the foundations. Plus, unfortunately, what I think is happening is we're repeating the typical pattern. Democrats come into office and fix the damage done by Republicans, and you can look at objective data, and then Republicans get to reap the benefits and take the credit.
All right, Spencer Critchley, Jenna Ellis, we thank you so much for your time. Next time we'll talk less about polls.